you've got 80 councillors within the Highland Council as well, who all have a possibility of making a decision on Nairn. And recently there was the Common Good decision, and there's 4 local councillors, but 80 councillors within the 76 other councillors had a say in the Common Good Fund for Nairn.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point, because we were assured at a meeting, I think you were probably at, Des, by William Gilfinnan, that the 4 Nairn district councils, if they said this is what they want to do with the Common Good, it wouldn't be overruled. And in fact, they had the power over the Common Good. We're still waiting on that follow-up meeting which we were promised about how the Common Good was going to be handled. I take a particular interest in the Common Good. I think the Common Good as a concept is really important. The use of Common Good assets, i.e. what we do with what the Common Good owns and has, is very important. But the fundamental point you're making is I will never again believe, until I see it changed, that our 4 councillors control the Common Good, because just what you're saying is true, that other people voted. The vote was 32-27, I think, in favour of what the Nairn amendment was. But there should be no question about that Nairn Common Good. These debts, that money that was allocated against the Nairn Common Good, many of us are still not sure whether that was acceptable to Audit Scotland, whether it ever should have been put against Audit Scotland. Certainly the farmer and the farming tenancy was entirely the Highland Council's responsibility. Other places have had their complete community centre funded out of central funds. And we are being asked to fund it out of our Common Good Fund. All these things take me into this fundamental argument about what is Nairn's fair share, how best we use it, and this very, very fundamental question, which will be on the table again tonight, as to whether the 4 Nairn councillors in fact are able to act independently in Nairn's best interest, or whether they're merely part of 80 councillors who can decide what they think is in the best interest of Highland. And these two might well not be compatible.
Isn't the Inverness, what was the Inverness district, Common Good, is that not administered differently as well?
It's handled very, very differently, and it's accumulated a vast amount of money. And the Longman, for example, is still owned by the Inverness Common Good, and it's run by the Inverness councillors and some other people, and it's handled entirely differently. So we have what suits Inverness and what apparently doesn't suit Nairn. And again, these are the issues I think we really need to get our heads around and understand. And if we had, because we are very asset rich as a community, we've got wonderful assets, but we're not using them properly, and we're not using our common good assets for the benefit of the Nairn population and the Nairn Common Good. And it's one of the issues that NICE was certainly, it's one of our ambitions, is to make sure that the Nairn Common Good is run properly for the benefit of Nairn.
What do you think are Nairn's assets?
Well, all the land at the present moment is owned by the people in Nairn. I take a very wide interpretation of what is ours. If it is owned by the council, to my simple mind that means it's ours. If it's owned by the health board, for example, the hospital is now no longer owned by the health board, but they pay the rent. But in terms of the property, there are a large number of very valuable assets in Nairn. There's the whole of the links, there's the whole of the riverside, there's all the bits and pieces that add up to a lot of very, very valuable assets for the Nairn tourist business. There's specific property, the old social work building, the old jail, the old police station. There's all sorts of bits and pieces that we should be using for the benefit of Nairn, either directly by making best use of the building or by realising the assets. There's the whole of Sandown. There are a lot of very valuable assets in the Nairn Common Good.
Are we making the best use of our assets?
No.
how can we make better use of our assets?
We have to have a system that's open, transparent, honest, and that we start to really manage it. For example, all the building in the Longman, to go back to Inverness, that the Longman is still owned by Inverness, so every year they get a rental out of a lot of that property. That seems to me very sensible. If we are going to allow development on common good land, we should have strict control. For example, I believe the rental that's been paid at the caravan site on common good land is very, very minimal. We haven't handled that very well, and rumour has it it's a very long lease that's been given. That's where we really need to be absolutely sure that decisions are being made in the best interest of Nairn. If you go back to the co-op, at one stage we owned quite a lot of the land around the co-op. We appear to have given it to previous incarnations of owners of the co-op site as part of the overall development plan to have a big town centre supermarket. When that didn't happen, we hadn't written in a buyback clause or a give back clause. So if they didn't go ahead with the development, it reverted to the common good. So there's a whole lot of issues in there where I feel that the Nairn Common Good has not been well managed.
It gives you a good example of what you were saying earlier about the impact that can be made on decisions that are made years ago on modern day, and the same with some of the planning decisions that are being made now could have impacts far beyond our lifetimes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this common rule stuff, the Jimmy Reid Foundation stuff that I'm quite into now, is talking about what are we leaving our children and our grandchildren. And if we're leaving them massive debt, totally inappropriate housing sprawl, no jobs and no population to go with it, we're leaving them a disaster. So we have to be very, very realistic about what we're doing here, why we're doing it, and what is in the best interest of future generations. And leaving them debt and expensive and unnecessary housing and just horrible urban sprawl seems to be a good example of what we should not be doing.